Now, when we look at these 5 characteristics, again, I want you to go through and think about, okay, does this fit for this client, that client, so on and so forth? Because if you have all 5, you are, is a pretty high probability that individual falls along has a personality disorder. If you only have like 2 or 3 or even 4 of these, likely you're looking at somebody with traits. So it's important to look at these things. Now, because I've talked a lot about the sadistic narcissistic MD, as I often refer to him in seminars like this, over time, over our 10 years, I want to tell you about the last 5 years that he and I worked together. So the first 5 years were pretty brutal. And the nurses would come to me and they say, help us, Dr. Fox, you have to help us. He is just out of control. And sometimes they would call me in my office. They'd say, he is just ranting. You need to help us. I'm like, what are you talking about? You want me to help you? What do you mean? And so over time, so I realized right when I figured out, okay, we have these 5 components at play. So I gotta work out how I can first get him to trust me. We're going to talk about that as we talk about narcissists. Then, and if he feels comfortable with me, then you have to let me in. We're going to talk about the veneer of perfectionism as we go down the road. You got to let me in to realize I'm not going to hurt you. If you'll let me in, that's all we really need as mental health providers. It's just a little bit of space, just a little bit, not a lot of space, just a little bit to get in. And you know you're in when they kind of tell you a little bit about thoughts, feelings, and maybe considerations. Because all human beings at one time or another, regardless of how severe their personality disorder is, their behavior, everyone has those moments where they're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. No one is 100% locked into anything. I believe that there are moments, 100% of the time. So you have to wait for those moments. So what had happened is over time, he started telling me about his kids, telling me about his wife. Then he would open up a little bit. One day, and this is about 4 or 5 years in, he says, well, I need your professional opinion. And I knew that this was huge because what he's telling me is, I trust you enough. But what he's telling me is, I'm going to ask for your professional advice, and it better be good. No pressure, right? And so he says, my daughter's having panic attacks, and I don't want her on medication. So what do you suggest? And I'm like, okay, boom. So panic attacks. I got that. I totally got it. So I gave him some relaxation strategies, also some panic episode kind of breakers, with the ice cube on your hand or the cold washcloth on your arm. Breathing techniques, also the importance of modeling that behavior, because remember, he's a narcissist. So he sees himself, as he ruling the roost, so to speak. And I'm like, that's fine. I said, the best way to do that is for you to model the excellence of control, of emotional control. And she'll learn that from you by watching your skilled ability to do that. And we're going to talk about speaking narcissism later, and that's exactly what that was. I had to speak to him in language that he would understand. I have to recognize the sensitivity and fragility of the narcissist. And I did that. It was, and I don't believe there are epiphanies or magic corners or anything like that. But that was an opening. And from there, he would sort of ask me some more questions. He wouldn't call me moron. We would have more intellectual discussions. When he would talk to me about medical procedures that he was that he was involved in, or the things that he was doing, he wasn't talking down to me anymore. He was talking to me. And over time, we were able to work with his behavior indirectly. But by the time he was done, people in the psychology department, people in the other medical department were like, wow, we're really going to miss him, because he retired. We're really going to miss him. We've really seen a change in his behavior. They weren't attributing it to me or anything like that. They were just saying they noticed that change. And I was like, cool. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, what we're talking about with the narcissist, recognizing these 5 things, recognizing those various patterns, beliefs, behaviors, and patterns, and then working with the narcissist, because the approach is very different. The treatment is very different than, say, somebody along the borderline personality disorder spectrum. So we have to adjust. And that's sometimes the challenge. So we're going to pull back the curtain on this today, because the first step is looking at the structure of personality.